Welcome to Live Well, Be Well with your host, Sarah Ann Macklin. In today's episode, I speak to DJ Fat Tony. Tony, welcome to Live Well, Be Well.
I feel like I'm on QVC, on the QVC channel. It's like in between us. Yeah. Hi, how are you? You all right?
I'm good. I have so much to talk to you about today because I've just finished reading your book.
Amazing.
I know it's one of the first. It's not actually out yet, but it will be when this is aired. It will be ready for people to buy.
Yeah, it comes out in 10 days' time, which is kind of scary.
Yeah. How did you feel writing that? Because it's basically your life from start to finish. And I have to say, you had...
Can I just stop you? It's not finished.
Not finished?
My life's not finished.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Till now.
Till now.
Till now.
Till now.
You know what? It was 2.5 years of sitting down and actually... Because the writing process was that I dictated, Mikey wrote it, and then he came back to me and I would read what I'd said the day before. And then I'd be like, oh, no, I don't want to say that. Let's change that and change this. So it was a really long, drawn-out process. And I kind of think I focused more on the non-trauma stuff at the beginning because I didn't want to talk about the trauma stuff because I found it so hard to deal with. And then we started discussing that stuff and I had to stop for a while. And then I decided I was going to start trauma therapy. And I went through a year and a half of intense trauma therapy around it, just so that I could process that stuff in the book. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But coming out the other end of it, I'm very vulnerable. I feel very raw. I'm nervous, to say the least. I really like it when people tell me they've read it because I think the more people that read it and understand what it is, the better. Because I think people expect it to be like, me and my superstar friends, or me and the party lifestyle. And there's a really small sprinkling of that in the book, obviously, because that's my life. But it's not about them. It's about me, and the stories are bringing. And it's really difficult to write the truth as well, because my truth isn't necessarily the truth. It's how I see it.
Yeah.
Or if I was in a situation, and and obviously it wasn't, I would always come out of it shining like some kind of mental superstar in my own mind, to actually write that stuff and then actually get other people's opinions on what really happened is what we did. We went off and we spoke to so many different people about certain situations that had happened and got their take on it. And then we reprocessed it and rewrote it because, my truth's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think, just the brave and the vulnerability that you've exposed to do this is so admirable, and you should be really proud of yourself. And I feel really privileged to be one of the first people to read that book. And I mentioned to you earlier, I'm not the fastest reader. I have a very short attention span. I read that in a couple of days because it was from the minute I opened it, it was like bang, 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 bang. I mean, I can't quite believe even how your life started, from the very beginning. I was just kind of, at one point I was like, is this real? Did this all happen to you? And we were sat here today in your beautiful flat in Pimlico, which is just like an oasis. But that's not how you grew up. Can you explain to me a bit about your childhood?
I actually grew up in Pimlico, which is rather weird because I never, my dad's family my dad was born on the end of this street I'm living on now. It all sounds very weird and creepy, but it just all fell into place. My dad was born in there, and my mum was from Chelsea. They had me. I was born on a street called Denby Street, which is 5 streets away from here. And we lived in a council flat. My mum, dad had me. My mum had already had my older brother from a previous marriage, and we had a working class upbringing. We moved from council house to council house to council house. We ended up in Battersea, and where I kind of grew up really. But then it was really weird. I kind of growing up on an estate in Battersea kind of was like, there was gangs, but they weren't gangs like, knife wielding gangs. There were gangs of kids, everyone that grew, because it was a new build. everyone that lived on the estate grew up together on the estate. There wasn't like people that had grown up there and new people had come. We all arrived there at the same time. So there was kind of a real camaraderie. I can't even say the word, but you know what, like literally everyone was there at the same time. So it was a real bonding with everyone.
It's like a big family.
Yeah, it really was on the estate. And, you know, being like probably the only out openly gay one. I never came out as a kid. I was always out.
Yeah, I read that actually in your book, and you said that you used to walk out when you're 14 in drag to, like, you know, annoy your dad because he obviously...
Yeah, of course.
But I had a gay brother, and I remember in Portsmouth, how afraid he was of coming out, even though he always knew he was gay. And it was a really eye-opening kind of read for me to go, you were always just out being... Where did that confidence come from?
I don't think it was a confidence. I think what it was a way of getting noticed and a way of saying, right, I'm over here. Because I had no brother who was always in trouble with the police. I had a younger brother that was the sunshine out of his arse, as far as my dad was concerned. I was the mummy's boy, and it was just like growing up in that, but where those two got the attention, I had to find my own platform. So I learned really early that by being ill, I got attention. So I you know, in today's diagnosis, that was Munchausen's. You know, but and I literally, from the age of 3, I was always ill because I got attention. I got gifts. I got people were coming to see Tony, and you know, I very very early on never ever questioned my sexuality. I kind of knew I wasn't like everyone else, and I was always I would always like to wear my mum's clothes like most gay boys do, but you know, there was never a point where I thought, I need to tell my parents I'm gay. I need to tell. That was just who I was. You know, I remember my mum always saying to me that the doctor had told her that I was gay when I was 3. I was like, why would the doctor fucking tell you that? It's not chicken pox. Do you get what I mean? But she always says, yeah, he'd said to her, I think your son might be gay. It's probably like, you know, in full drag in his surgery at 3, knowing me. But yeah, I was very, you know, it was a way of just being like, okay, don't mess with me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think though, so many kids find to struggle to have that confidence, and for you to actually have that confidence to do that on an estate, you know, in an era where it wasn't, you know, as open as it is today, being gay.
It certainly wasn't.
There is a lot of obviously confidence in that as a child, even if that was a kind of a cry for, you know, attention for you to be seen.
Yeah, I think, you know, also, I mean, when I, by the age I got to like 10, and I got, you know, I got sexually abused around the age of 10, and like, you know, literally because I was so openly gay, you know, predators sort of saw that as a weakness and thought, okay, there's a 10-year-old kid who's kind of quite effeminate or openly, you know, in their eyes as an easy target. Really, and that kind of sexualized me really early, and which that kind of made me feel like it was me against the world as such at that point, and I thought the more loud and the more gay I was and the more out there I was, the more less likely people would come and you know, it was like a shield really.
Yeah, always like a character.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And can we talk about, I know that's a really hard part for you to write in the book. You actually explained to me earlier that when you were writing this, you actually had to step away because you felt...
the abuse chapter, yeah. It made, whilst we were writing it, on like day 2, I was like, you know, and I literally, Mikey said, oh, you look great, are you all right? And I was like, no, I feel like I'm going to be sick. And I literally ran and was vomiting. And I thought I had food poisoning for 2 days. And it wasn't food poisoning. What it was the fact that I brought all of this stuff to the surface, and it physically made me ill, and I couldn't go back to it. And I was like, we need to come back to that chapter further on down the line, because I always thought that I dealt with it. I mean, how does a 10-year-old deal with being abused? They don't. Do you know what I mean? We push it to one side. We overcompensate in other areas, and you know, and I think that. Because it wasn't I got abused once. It went on for 4 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, and suddenly it became like a job. The sexual abuse became a job. It became me. I kind of, suddenly being sexualized at that age and having an obsessive, addictive personality, which I've always had, was like pouring petrol on top of petrol and then setting it on fire. You know, it was insane. And so I suddenly being sexualized, I had this new world. It literally, it took away my youth, and it became like almost like a superpower, because I thought I could get what I wanted from men. I could do it, you know, yeah.
Because this kind of manifested, didn't it, in your book when you mentioned about the moment when you were expelled at 14?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I mean, I was always very good at drama, funnily enough, you know, and I literally just had this infatuation with a drama teacher at the school, and he, you know, he'd cast me in a couple of the school plays, and I was obsessed. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna work my magic. I really thought that I could, like, if I put my mind to it, I could get any man I wanted, like, who I thought was gay. And I completely manipulated the situation. I would stay behind in class, I would help in drama, you know. And I put it on this guy. And he was only young himself. He wasn't like an old man teacher. He was in his early, like late mid-20s. Do you know what I mean? And I was this like 14-year-old going on 19, 20-year-old that had grown up really quickly. And
you had to grow up.
Yeah, and I put it on him, and you know, I started this kind of. It was a fantasy affair at first, and then it kind of became real. And I kissed him. I did all of that stuff. I put it on him, and he was like, "No, you're a kid," and I'd be like, "No, I'm not a kid." Anyway, it transpired. We had one lunchtime. I forced myself on him, and it's so awful to say it, but you know, I forced myself on him. Anyway, we're having oral sex as such, and they in this school we had these massive windows. Like they were like the whole wall was a window, and it was frosted, and I was leaning on that, and they had these short radiators that I remember. I was standing on the radiator, and I went through the window backwards and smashed the window and landed up on the grass. And it was at the lunchtime, and this school was divided into different houses. So they were the dining rooms. So I came through the window in front of the dining rooms with my trousers around my ankles. And I remember lying on the floor thinking, oh my God, you've done it now. And I got taken to the headmaster, obviously, and they were more concerned that I broke the window than having sex with my drama teacher. And they called my mum up to school. My mum came, and they were like, look, we don't really want Tony here anymore. And we think it's best that we call it a day. And they would not discuss what had gone on.
They just wanted to kind of push it under the carpet.
They just would, of course, you know, because it was like, you know, the police would be, oh, you know, it's a scandal. And I was quite happy to leave at that point in time. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Do you know what I mean? So my mum and me came up with this plan that I would leave school but not tell my dad. So every day I would leave school. I'd leave my house in school uniform.
And you'd go to the King's Road?
I'd go to the King's Road and hang out in the King's Road. I had a Saturday job in the King's Road, in a newsagent's opposite Peter Jones. And it kind of just got to know everyone there. And suddenly there was this amazing place on the King's Road called the Great Gear Market. And it was just at the tail end of punk rock, and we'd gone through into the new romantic era. And everybody walked up and down King's Road. King's Road was social media. I say this an awful lot in interviews. King's Road was what Facebook is now and what Instagram is. You went there to be seen. You went there to have your photos taken. It was a place that you went to be discovered as such. So people would swan up and down the King's Road on a Saturday afternoon in their best looks and be photographed. And they'd come into the Great Gear Market, which was a indoor market with loads of really creative stalls. There were loads of young designers in there. There was music in there. There was, you know, at the time, all the big hitters had stalls in there, like Rusty Egan, who would run Blitz and all of those clubs. He had a record shop in there. I worked behind that on another stall, and you know, so I just hung out in there, and then suddenly started getting a job in there, and that was it.
And that was your start into the DJing?
Well, kind of, yeah, really quickly, because I suddenly discovered going out clubbing at 14 on a Tuesday night. And then slowly but surely after working in the King's Road, people go, oh, we're going to this tomorrow night, do you want to come? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm coming. And, you know, I would tell everyone.
You weren't at school?
Of course. And I would tell everyone that I was 18. I would tell everyone, yeah, I'm 18. My age changed with whoever I met. Do you get what I mean? I never ever once told anyone my real age. Never. Because I just didn't want to be taken silly, like as that silly little boy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always lied. It was yet again another coping mechanism of like survival, of telling people, okay, I want you to be accepted. They're not going to accept so I start hanging out with a 14-year-old.
And so before we get into how you became on the scene as a DJ and were flying to Concord by the time you were 18, which I find fascinating, did your dad ever know that you got expelled from school? How long did you keep this facade
We
up?
kept it up for about a good 6, 7 months, and then it all came out.
And what happened?
He didn't know that I'd been thrown out of school for sex. He heard that I got expelled. I'd told him that I'd left, and my mum had dropped it in the conversation at some point that I got thrown out, as she always did. And then that turned into this massive like thing, and I was like going to leave home, and my dad was like, okay, if you don't want to be there, then that's fine. You know, I kind of made out that I'd been bullied for some time, and all that stuff. But I wasn't. I never, at the beginning of school, I was bullied because I had permed hair, really long permed hair.
You needed this.
God. I remember them calling me Sally, like that week, at the first week of internship at the school, and I thought, oh, they won't be doing that for long. Do you know what I mean? And I started hanging around with the roughest girls in the school, the hardest girls in the school, and became the bully.
I
became the bully. I thought, I'm not going to get bullied by anyone.
And so you stood up for yourself. Well, that's actually how your dad taught you to grow up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You said that if there was anyone that was going to attack you, you would then basically pick up a brick and go over and throw yourself.
He taught us if we come home crying, he would throw us back on the street and tell us to go and hit that person.
Yeah.
Go and beat them up, otherwise you will get belted. And we would have to go off and do it. My dad would he taught us. Listen, my dad was so staunch when it came to right and wrong. And he came from a military background. There was no way he was going to allow his children to be bullied for who they were. There was never any discussion of my dad not knowing what my sexuality was. My dad knew. He just didn't want to discuss it. Which I always used as a tool to think, oh my God, he hates me because I'm who I am. He didn't hate me at all. He literally loved that, the whole fact of what I was doing and who I was. He could see that I was really strong within myself. That I wanted to be that person.
And do you think he accepts that now?
I'd like to think he passed away in 11 years ago, 12 years ago, and he accepted it. Yeah, literally. Well, I as I say in the book, I got to know him just before he passed away properly. Because I spent many a year blaming him for who I was, the mess that I was in. I used to blame him on the fact that he hated me, he did this, he did that. It was all tools just to make myself feel better because of the state I got myself into. And when I was sober, I was put down there after my court case, and I was down there on bail at my mum and dad's house at 41. It's like I had this kind of second childhood almost because I had to be with them watching TV and. I blamed him for everything, and he wasn't that person. He was not that person that I thought he was, that I'd love to blame. And I got really close to him for some time, and we got really friendly, and, I saw my real dad, the way, and he loved me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely loved me, and he saw me get clean, he saw me stay clean, he saw me win my court case, and then he passed away shortly after, in front of me, which I'm very grateful for, that I had that chance of being there when he passed.
Yeah. And for him to see your transformation. Totally.
It's the most incredible thing in the world. Just to see that how proud he was of how far I'd come.
How an amazing thing though to leave you with that. To know that everything you've been through, because you are now 14 years sober.
No, I'm actually 15 and a half.
15 and a half?
Yeah, you didn't read the book properly.
I did read the book. We'll cut that bit out.
No, I'm 15 and a half years. Yeah.
15 and a half years sober. And so let's talk about this journey then in between. So you started on the King's Road.
Yeah.
First of all, how did you get the name DJ Fat Tony? Because this must have come around quite early.
Well, I was Fat Tony for a reason, because after the abuse, I became really fat. I put on so much weight it was like, okay, I don't want anyone ever else to get close to me. So by being fat was a really good way of protecting myself. But of course, when you're a fat kid, you're not protecting yourself. What you're doing is you're putting yourself in the firing line. And of course, people called me Fat Tony, Rich Tony, Fat Tony. And I kind of just thought, you know what, you're not going to get away with that either. I'm going to own that. And I used the name. I called myself Fat Tony. That was it. People go, I'd see people and I'd call people up. I'd say, it's Fat Tony. And that was where the name came from. And obviously the DJing was added to it much further down the line. Well, not that much further, actually. Only a good couple of years.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, like by the time I was 16, yeah.
But how do you feel about being called DJ Fat Tony now?
I love it.
Do you?
People go all the time, oh, you should change your name, you know, or whatever. I mean, I've had this for the last 40 odd years. People go, oh, you're not fat. You need. And it's like, you know what? Why would I change my name from something that's who I am and has got me to this point in time? You know, it's a great name.
It is a great name.
I own it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's who I am.
It's a memorable name.
It is a memorable name, you know. Although there's one in The Simpsons, I was around before him, so you can fuck off as well. But no, you know, it's kind of weird. It's how I never chose that name. I never chose to be a DJ. I never chose 95% of the stuff that happened to me in my life. I never chose.
Can you talk to me then about these highlighting moments where you were then at one point on Concorde at 18, flying to New York? I mean, the whole story of how this came about, I find really fascinating.
Oh, what, the DJing side of it? So basically, I started off DJing on a Saturday night for Rusty and Steve at their club called The Playground, which was at the Lyceum, where the Lion King is now. So it was no small club, it was a massive venue. And I started playing there because I said the music was shit every week and people were leaving. So Rusty literally said, well, if you think you can do better, you do it. And I turned up the next week and did it. And within a month, we had our own night on a Tuesday night called Total Fashion Victim, which was at the WAG Club. And at the time, the WAG was like the place to be in London. And we started this Tuesday night with a fashion designer from St Martin's School of Art called Stephen Linnard. And we called it TFE, and it was like, and it was, you know, it wasn't groundbreaking. It wasn't anything, but, you know, people would fly in. And at the time, London was the place to be, as far as everyone in America thought. You know, we had all the young designers, everything was really starting to happen again. And people would come, and that one week Andy Warhol came to the club and all of those people, and they come and they hung out. And of course, what happened in those days was, we didn't have social media, so things would be in magazines and people would write the face. People would read those magazines and say, okay, we want that here. So it literally, they came to the club, they met us, and within a week, or I think it was about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to go and DJ in New York. And that was kind of how it all just came about. It literally just springboarded and springboarded and springboarded. And I remember the first time I went on Concorde was because I badgered George, as in Boy George.
Because you grew up with him from 14, didn't you?
Yeah, I literally met him when I was 14 on the King's Road. And we were best friends. And he was suddenly the biggest pop star on the planet. And I remember going, he was like, what do you want for your birthday? I was like, I want to go on Concorde to New York. And I was like, he was like, I'm not getting you that. And I was like, please get me that. And I was like, literally, that's all I talked about. So of course, I knew I was going to get it. And he got it, and I went off to New York and literally stayed for months. I remember I was only going for a week. And I ended up staying months, you know. And then you know, I met Steve Rebell and those guys, and they had just opened a club called the Palladium. And literally, I remember being at the Palladium when it opened, the week it opened, and thinking, oh my God, I've arrived, this is the most amazing place in the world. And a month later, I was DJing there. You know, it was always the gift of the gab. It was always the mouth, you know what I mean?
The network.
You need me. You need me to do this. Do you get what I mean? I can do this. And that was it. They were flying me back over. Originally, first of all, they were just flying me over normally, and then suddenly, they saw the potential that I managed to get them to keep flying me on Concorde.
And paying you the big bucks.
They were paying me a fortune. And I remember one day, as it says in the book, the one time when they flew me in, and I'd done so much MDMA that night, literally, that my friends met me at the airport, and they had these cardboard banners they'd made. They were all off their nuts. And there's bags of MDMA stapled to the banners at the airport. So I came through, and of course, you know, we were like doing the pills and.
Can you imagine that in airport security now?
No, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. But you know, then it did, and it was like we went off to the Palladium, and I remember saying, "It's not working. It's not working. I need more." I remember bending down to get something out of my record bag, and I came back up like Cookie Monster. I was like, and they were like looking at me, and I was like, "We got to go out there." And they were like, "You just got here." And I was like, "We got to go. We got to go." And I remember just leaving the record playing and walking out of the club and going off on this like mad, like tripping like experience around New York. I remember the next day that Steve rang me, and he was like, and I thought, oh my God, that's it, sacked already. And they were like, oh my God, everyone was talking about last night. You were incredible. Everyone was loved your set. I played one record.
And you weren't there?
Oh, it wasn't there.
How did you get away with that?
Knows. I don't know. And then I was there 2 weeks later again. Back in New York 2 weeks later. Literally. I remember the first time they came to pick me up from the airport, Steve Rebell and Steve Lewis came in, who was his right-hand man. And
Yeah.
They came to pick me up. And I thought it was a bit weird, Steve Rebell's coming to meet me from the airport, you know what I mean? It was like, I mean, I didn't really have any kind of inkling of who he was. I knew he'd done other nightclubs. You know, this myth of Studio 54 and these massive myths didn't really exist then. They just shut 2 years before, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone knew who Steve was on that, you know, but in London we didn't really know. We didn't really care. Do you know what I mean? We were busy doing our own stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And to meet him, and then I remember him in the car, and I was in the back of the car with him, and I was sitting there, and I remember him turning to me going, "Tonight, today you'll be massive news in New York, and tomorrow no one will give a And I was like, oh really? Right, yeah, you watch. I remember literally thinking, off, shut up, you mug. And you know, and
well, it's true that you thought that, because I mean, you DJ at Madonna's 30th.
I've done
Prince,
all of those things. Yeah,
Stevie.
of course. I mean, that, you know, it just, everything always springboarded.
Yeah.
You know, it was who you knew and how you knew it. And you know, literally just being in the right place at the right time for the most of that stuff.
And it sounds to the listener, right, how incredibly glamorous and fast-paced this life sounds, but it morphed into decades of addiction and suffering.
Totally. I never wanted to be a DJ. It was something I fell into. I've always loved music, and I've always loved the power of music. But I've never ever wanted to be a DJ. It wasn't something like, oh my God, this is what I'm going to be. This is my chosen career. It was something that just happened. So I never really gave it the respect that it needed. You know, it was just, okay, this is my new job. This is what I'm doing this week. Do you know what I mean? However long it's going to last for. And suddenly when it started taking off, all my friends were getting bigger and bigger and bigger within their careers, and they were becoming like the most famous people on the planet. So, and I was just this little DJ, so I didn't really respect the levels of where I was. You know, flying on Concorde, I kind of took for granted because that's what my friends did. All of the things, you know, where I was staying and the traveling and all of that stuff was all taken for granted. And, you know, being less than, and this is the bit I didn't put this in the book, but feeling, you know, traveling the world and doing all that stuff. And, you know, most people would give their right arm to do that stuff. I always felt less than in that situations. Because my friends were, as I say, at that point in time, on every front page of the papers in the world, they were doing what they were doing. And I was just this little DJ. So for me, I always felt less than all of my mates. So I never really grasped where I was in life.
Which now we call imposter syndrome, but back then no one even knew what that was.
And it is imposter syndrome. I would sit on the plane thinking, oh my God, everyone hates me. I'm only here because of this reason or that. It was very painful. And to deal with that stuff, you know, it started off as partying and, you know, alcohol and drugs like it always does. The first time you go to a club, you don't go there because so-and-so, Jack, the guy from Henley's selling cocaine. That's not the reason you go to a club. You go to a club because it's an experience. You want to experience the music. You go there to dance, right? That's why we go. The more we go to those clubs and the more we're introduced to that, that's never enough. For someone like me, that's amazing the first time. Oh my God, I got so high on the music. I got so high from being in that environment. the next time I go, I want that high back. I won't get that high.
Chasing.
I mean, you know, so nothing's ever enough for someone like me with such addictive personality. And it wasn't long before the drinking got worse, and then people would go, "Oh my God, you know, you were so drunk," and I'd be like, I don't remember. And then people go, "Oh, you need to do some cocaine; it will stop you from being so drunk." And then suddenly that was it. It just spiraled out of control. I thought I was having fun. I'd say for the first 10 years I probably was.
And when we talk about addiction, it really spanned across all addiction: sex addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction.
I never thought I had a drink problem ever. For the 28 years that I used and abused drugs, I didn't think for 1 minute that I had an alcohol problem until it ran out. And for the majority of that time, it never ran out. I'd always, everywhere I worked, you know, it was a part of what I did. And it wasn't until 6 a.m. in the morning when I'm standing outside the off license, waiting for the off license to open, like the local newsagent that sold alcohol, waiting for that to open, that I realised I had a problem. But it was only alcohol. I used to look down my nose at alcoholics. My boyfriend at the time, his sister had a real alcohol problem. And I used to think, nothing like that. I do class A's, something really special about me. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy that we do these scenarios in our heads where everyone else is always worse than us.
So breaking that down, I mean, there's so many moments in that book where I was really shocked at how bad it did get. You lost your house?
I lost the house very quickly.
Yeah.
I got this, you know, prior to that, I've been living in Old Compton Street and all these other houses. And you know, the trying to get your head around, because everything was always given to me, right? Like, I never really had to go out and earn. I didn't have to do a day's graft in my life. And, you know, when I worked in the King's Road, I used to steal so much money out the till, go and buy so many designer clothes. Everything was always kind of just, oh, okay, I can get that again. I can do this again. You know, there was never a real, like, I think from when I was being abused as a child and he paid me to work for him, I think that's where my lack of care for money came from. I always thought money, the more money I had, the more money I should spend, because money is dirty. I never earned it. Do you get what I'm saying to you? I didn't respect it. So, you know, later on, you know, just the whole way that I lived everything, you know, drink and drugs just completely took over. And I had no care for it. And, you know, suddenly I'd been living in these flats in Old Compton Street. I lived in Old Compton Street for 11 years. I think I paid rent once. And that's not a lie.
Wow.
I just moved from house to house in the 80s and 90s and be like, you've not paid rent for a year. What are we going to do? And I'd be like, he was like, what have you done with it? I was like, I spent it all on cocaine. And I'd be honest about it.
Yeah.
Because it was like almost like a badge of honour.
Well, you said that you spent over $1 million, you think?
Yeah, I easily. You know, and that's not a boast. When I did the Mix Mag documentary, I'd said it in a conversation, and they used it as, yet again, a tagline, which made it like I was boasting. I've never boasted about anything that I've done in that sense, because there's nothing to boast about. It destroyed my life. It was not something like, oh yeah, I got a Lamborghini and I got this. No. It was that the badge of honour had gone long before with the teeth.
Well, let's talk about meth mouth.
But like, I literally had lost everything. And you know, when I did that comment about, I spent over £1 million, it was like, how much do you think you've spent? And I said, well, way over £1 million. So suddenly it became this, I've spent £1 million on cocaine. You know, and it was taken out of context. And you know, I did spend, I probably way more than that. And I used to earn I earn a lot of money from DJing, and as I say, I had no respect for it. So everything I earned, I got. I think I was most happiest on a Wednesday night when I couldn't afford to buy a packet of cigarettes, and I would have earned £3,000-4,000 over a weekend. And on a Monday night, I had nothing left. Or on a Wednesday night, I had nothing left to show for it.
From the drugs and the alcohol?
Yeah, from the drugs. Yeah.
So you just mentioned there your teeth.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this?
Yeah, we can
meth
talk
mouth.
about it.
This is something that really really got to me when I read this part in that chapter with the screwdriver and the kitchen knives and the animals that were feeling so heavy inside your mouth. Can you just digress what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I've always bitten my nails. It's something I've done from a kid, and so having my fingers in my mouth is a normal thing for me. And when I would do drugs, I would sit and I would just dig at my gums or poke, you know. And where you smoke 200 cigarettes in 2 days or 3 days of being up awake, red mulberry, you know, your gums start to recede and you start to get this, like, your gums become infected and, you know, they're sore. So I was sitting and digging them more, and very, very, over the course of time, I would get mouth infections and stuff like that. And when you rub cocaine on your gums, or you snort cocaine, or you take drugs, your gums recede even quicker. So my mouth was in a terrible state. So then suddenly, when I was introduced to new drugs like crystal meth and stuff like that, the paranoia from crystal meth, like that comes part and parcel with that drug, made me think that I had animals living in my mouth. And basically, it's a thing called meth mouth. My whole mouth was septic at one point, like completely septic, and it was rotting, and I would just sit and the pain was so excruciating. But where I'd taken so much drugs and continued to take so much drugs, my face would be numb half the time, and when it was numb, I would use my fingers to push my teeth, like to stop the pain and try and get thinking that there were animals in there and stuff like that. And I would dig at them with sticks and dig them with, and get pliers and like kitchen utensils and knives and just put them in my mouth and work the teeth free. And I think, when I actually got clean, I had one tooth left at the front, at the bottom. I wouldn't call it a tooth. I had one stump left at the bottom. And the rest of the mouth was completely broken teeth and rotten, and yeah, it was awful. And I remember I went to get, when I was applying for rehab, and I went for a psychiatric assessment. And I used to rock backwards and forwards like this, thinking that would calm me. So I'd be like rocking backwards and forwards, digging it around, completely insane. And I remember I went to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was like, "Have you ever self-harmed?" And I was like, "No, why would I self-harm? I've never self-harmed." My partner sat next to me and he was like, "You pulled all your teeth out." And I'd be like, "Yeah, but that wasn't self-harming." That's that my mind had gone so far that I actually thought that was a normal behaviour.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got clean and having the courage, and it took such courage to go to the dentist. I got through rehab without no teeth, and I literally remember them sending me to the dentist, and I was like, I don't know what to do, and I'm really ashamed. Because the shame that come with it.
It's the shame, yeah.
I literally would talk to people like this with my hand in front of my mouth for years and years and years. And the shame that was attached to that, and the way it made me look, and it made me feel. I had no self-worth, I had no self-respect, I'd lost all of that long before. And that process of putting down drink and drugs and suddenly having to deal with those situations that you had created and you're using is a really, really daunting and heavy task. More so than putting down the drink and the drugs, because suddenly you're in this, you had to look at the wreckage of your past and you have to deal with it. But mine was in my face. My face had caved in. I mean, I had. It's a really weird situations happen when you do drugs. Your bone structure almost changes. Your face becomes hollow. You lose all the fat in your face, and from other ailments, I mean, my skin was wafer thin. I looked, it was awful. So to front that and think, okay, I'm going to get my teeth sorted, I had to go and have a full dental cleanse. I had to remove bits of bone. I had to, it was a pretty heavy thing.
Traumatic.
To come through rehab and then to go through that experience. And I remember them saying, okay, once they did it, you won't be able to have any teeth for a year. And I was like, what? I can't live without teeth for a year, bearing in mind I'd already done it for 4. Do you know what I mean? Because I've got this new life to lead, and I used to put bits of tissue paper in my mouth to plump my cheeks out. And so
So you lived again for another year without any teeth?
No.
No.
I wasn't going to do that. I found a dentist that would do the work.
Yeah.
So I went and found a dentist. A friend of mine introduced me to a dentist. I went off and found him. And he basically made plates for my mouth because I had to wait for everything to shrink. So what I did was I had these false teeth made, and I would go back every 3 months, and he would make them, put bits of lining in to make them smaller. So the process, and then of course, then when the mouth had healed, only then could they start the work.
Right.
So that went on for another 4 or 5 years.
That's a lot to go through.
It is a lot to go through, but you know what? At that point in time, when my life was getting better and I was healing, I had the strength to go through that because I knew there would be light at the end of the tunnel, and suddenly my life was getting better, and it was only getting better because I'd found the courage to change.
What do you think brought that courage on? Because there is a chapter in the book called The End.
Yeah. You know, it's all it takes is the love of one person to be there at the right time and say the right thing. And that happened one night I was rocking backwards and forwards, digging at that one tooth, and I was in the Cross nightclub in King's Cross. And they had a green room, and I was in the back room, and I'd been out for 3 or 4 nights already, and I'd had a big fight with my boyfriend at the time, and he'd been barred from that club for a very long time because he used to come there and he'd drag me out the DJ box and fight me, and very rightly so, because I'd disappear for days on end, and he knew I would be there because that was my ways and means to get more of everything. And he got barred for fighting me there once. And he would say to people, you're going to find him dead on your toilet floor. You're going to be responsible. You're employing him. And I'd be like, he's mental. He's just trying to ruin everyone's fun. And he wasn't. He was just, all he was doing was trying to save my life. And he turned up that night. And I remember my friend Edna coming and saying, Johnny, as we call him in the book, is here. And I just thought, I can't cope with this tonight. And I literally remember just sitting there thinking, please don't let him in here. And he came in, and I turned around and I looked at him and I just thought, no, please God, don't. I can't cope with this. And I, at this point in time, weighed just over 7 stone. I was emaciated. I was on death's door. All I ever thought about at that point in time was dying. And about my funeral and everything that went with it. And I remember him coming and putting his hand on my shoulder, and I looked at him, and I remember him saying, there was no judgment in his face. Normally it'd be like, get out of it. And he literally just put his hand on his shoulder, and all he said to me was, what happened to you? And it makes me always want to cry because it was that moment that changed my life. It was suddenly like, I couldn't look at him and I couldn't answer him, and I started to cry, and it was that moment of the end. I really felt that I'd come to a very, very, very big brick wall, and I just thought, I can't move on from this. I'm either going to die or I'm going to do something about it. And that little pilot light came on, and 2 days later I left the club with him that night, and 2 days later I went to see my doctor, who I'd never told that I had a drug addiction, even though he knew. I mean, everyone knew, do you know what I mean? And I went to see him and I said, I need help. And he said, I've been waiting for you to come and see me for a very long time. And I was like, I'm ready, I just can't do this anymore. And he introduced me to a drug drop-in centre, which was in City Road in Islington, and I went there. And that's kind of where the process started. Kind of decided that I wanted to stop, and I wanted to live. That was it. It wasn't about stopping taking drugs or drinking. It was the fact that I wanted to live. I didn't want to die anymore, and I'd wanted to die for so long, and I'd done everything in my power to try and kill myself on a daily basis, by taking drugs, and still thinking that I was in control. I hadn't been in control for a very long time. And that was it. I met a wonderful woman who I mentioned in the book called Penny Checker, who basically became my care worker and stuff. And she helped me get into rehab. She helped me do the whole process of stopping and making me believe. Because, if you, in the finished book, which the hardback, and I do the thank yous, and the very last line of the book is, when we believe, we're halfway there. And that was it. I was suddenly on this journey, a new journey, where I had managed to get myself 30 days clean, and then I went into rehab. I say I managed to get myself clean. I was not alone. I can't do this on my own. My way doesn't work. So I'd found a new way of kind of living. I'd found a 12-step program which I started attending, and found these new people that kind of had clean time, and I was like, wow. And I still didn't know how to stop on my own, and I needed help. And it was that moment that I asked for help, and I sent some. That's one of the strongest things anyone can ever do, is to actually say, I need help. And actually mean it. Not I need help for financial gains, or I need help because I want you to feel sorry for me. To actually say to someone, I really need help, I can't do this anymore, please help me. It takes guts. And that's why, if someone sends me a message via whatever on social media, via Instagram or whatever, I always reply, because that's a cry for help. And if someone hadn't listened to me when I was in that position, I'd be dead now. And all it takes is that one moment to change someone's life, and that one bit of genuine love and concern. That's all it takes sometimes.
I really felt your emotion when you were telling me about that part at the end. And it's still obviously so prominent, that strong feeling in you now. How do you deal with those emotions when they arise? Because even when you were writing the book, when you told me about obviously feeling sick, you still went through that, even though you're dealing with the trauma. I think it's really important to still say, it's still being such a big part of your life.
For me now, the way I deal with that stuff is the fact that my life is incredible because of the things I don't do anymore, not because of the things I do, right? And, I have coping mechanisms today. I've learned tools to deal with my emotions. I just lost my dog recently, and I was devastated. If that had happened 7 years ago, even when I was in 7 years ago, I probably would have picked up a drink or a drug. I didn't, because I'm in a different position now, and my life is so incredible. I know that drinking or taking drugs or any of those other destructive behaviours will destroy what I've got, and I don't want to destroy that. Things are too good for me. I have freedom today, and I don't spend my life wanting more. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I have days where enough's not enough, but you know what? The majority of the time, I'm really content with who I am, and that kind of helps me work through that stuff. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I went through a breakup whilst writing the book as well, with my partner who I'd been with for 8 years. And probably one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, because, I was really responsible for a lot of the damage that I caused in this relationship, being clean. It's when you deal with one addiction at a time, I think it's always best to, there's always other things looming around, and it will always pop up in other areas, and you have to be really, really mindful of your behaviour, because I always say that drinking and drugs will never kill me again, and I can say hand on heart, I truly believe that, but my behaviours will be the one that take me down. That's because I can wake up in the morning and think, oh, today's a really good day to cheat on my boyfriend, just like that. It will come into my mind. And I'll think, no, today's not a good day to do that. Whereas before, that would come into my mind, and an obsession is one thought that overrides all others. And I still get those obsessions. I get obsessions around shopping, obsessions around eating. If I have sushi on a Monday night and it's really good, I'll have it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Do you know what I mean? I have to watch that stuff. When I do that stuff, I think, okay, right, what's going on for you? You need to stop this, because I still look for things to change the way I feel.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, when you can look at addictive personality, somebody could go from a really unhealthy addiction, like drugs, and then become completely addicted in the gym.
Yeah.
And then it can work.
Yeah.
And that's how you would probably categorise yourself.
Always, totally. It always shifts to something else. Shopping was a really good one. I still love shopping. I still get high from shopping. sometimes I'll be in a changing room and my nose will start running because that neuro path is still open. You know, that feeling that I used to get from shopping when I was high, like being, you know, my nose will start running. I start gurning. Still, like 15 and a half years. Yeah.
And do you feel that you still struggle with the sex addiction today?
Totally. You know, if I was to sit and say, oh no, I've got that under wrap. No. I struggle with addiction, full stop. Sex addiction, I'm in the most transparent relationship I've ever been in my life. My partner knows absolutely everything about me, which is remarkable because I've never ever been in a relationship where someone knows everything about me. And I truly believe he's come into my life at the right time for that reason. And, you know, I don't wake up today thinking, oh, right, I'm going to destroy my relationship. You know, it will come into my mind sometimes and I just think, what are you thinking? You know, I will shake it out, it will go. I will always struggle with that. Because like most people, when they think, oh, I've had a really tough day today, I need a drink. I don't think that. I will think, oh, today's been a really good day. You know, I get to the point where I find it really hard to accept that someone wants to love me for me. I've always struggled with that, as you know, from a very young age. And, you know, it will always be there. Like, you know, I'm only one drink away from being an addict again, like an alcoholic again. It's always going to be there and I have to always be mindful of it. To say that I don't deal with that stuff on a daily basis would be rubbish. Of course I do. But you know what? I've got all of that under control right now. Like I don't have a drink or a drug. I don't cheat on my boyfriend today. All right, and I don't cheat on myself because that's primarily the one. Totally. I'm not going to cut myself short. No way, man. I've just met the most incredible person that struggles with exactly the same things as I do. And as I said before, I can't do that. We can. Do you get what I mean? I have to remember that. And yeah, of course I'm always going to struggle with that stuff. But the struggle doesn't have to be a struggle if I deal with it and look at it.
What's the coping mechanisms that you do to keep up that self-love for yourself?
I think self-affirmation is a really good thing. I think that if you're having a really bad day, like I had a bad day on Sunday around my dog. I was at home on my own and it came on me and I was like, oh no, I can't deal with this. And I think that, you know, to look at yourself in the mirror and affirm yourself that you can do this, you're worth this, that you're you're lovable, you know, you love yourself. You know, it really does. You know, by just saying that stuff, getting it out of here and putting it out into the world really helps. I find myself praying in the back of taxis on the way to work, and you know, because I will vocalize. If I vocalize something, it takes the power out of it. You know, also I think that, you know, if you're sitting at home and you're feeling really low and you're having a bad day, change your environment. Get up and just walk out the house and go for a walk. I guarantee by the time you get home, you're going to feel 99% better. It really does work. It's just about changing that mind shift. You can wallow in misery, self-misery all day. If you know, it's up to you how you change it. Do you know what I mean? And I've learned, if I start to feel that way, I just think, well, an hour in, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? Do you know what I mean? And as I always say, slapping your own face is the only way to wake up. It really is. Someone else slapping your face causes a row or a fight. Do you know what I mean? But you know, it really is. It's about just thinking, okay, right, why am I feeling like this? I know why I'm feeling like this. Let me just get out and change this.
And some people might not even realise what they're feeling like. I think a lot of people get very disconnected from how they feel. And
of course.
Catastrophic thoughts, negative thought patterns.
Learned behaviour.
Yeah.
It's learned behaviour. And it's about changing those learned behaviours. Because I'm quite happy being a victim. I'm quite happy being wallowing in self-misery because that's all I've learned all most of my life, and those were coping mechanisms. I don't use those mechanisms now. It's like having a rusty old toolbox of tools. You know, when you suddenly can go and get new shiny ones that work. You know, I've got new shiny tools.
And it's hard. Do you know what? That's the hardest thing to say because your brain is really lazy, and for teaching you neural pathways is really hard. That's why habits are so hard to stick to.
I remember when I first started gurning, like when I started going back to DJing, and I've been like playing and people are like, oh my God, he's not sober. And because my jaw would go. And it was basically the association with doing my DJing to my brain. Those neuropaths would straight away go to my jaw and my jaw would swing. Because I was always literally gurney when I DJed. So to learn how to overcome that, I had to go and see this guy called Michael Hebel, who did a book. He wrote a book called Brilliant, and it basically was like turning why into how. Why do I feel like this? How can I change the way I feel? You know, so he taught me very quickly how to use the tip of my tongue to stop myself from gunning by putting it on the back of my teeth as a pressure point. So when I was DJing, I would use my tongue, and it would stop me from gunning because my mind would be concentrating on putting the tongue on the back of the teeth. Really simple stuff, and it really worked.
Yeah.
You know, I find myself today, you know, my worst traits are when I'm tired, I lie. I still lie just to get out of doing something, you know, and I don't need to lie, I just need to say, you know what, I'm tired, I'm not going to do that. And my other one is learning to say no without explanation. It's such a gift.
I think that's the hardest one though, to
It
say
really
no.
is. Because I, you know, I've been a people pleaser.
You're a people, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a caretaker as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, just so I would give away so much of my time or so much of Tony that I'm left with nothing, and that bankrupts me spiritually, mentally and physically. And I can't be that person today. I need to have some back for me.
Yeah.
That's self-love.
That is the self-love part.
That's where self-love comes from. I have to have that time for myself to do what makes Tony feel good.
And before we get onto that, which is something I'm going to bring up, there's something I do really want to just make sure we talk about, which is the chapter when you talk about HIV. Because I think it's a really important issue to talk about, especially for a gay man.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how your journey was with, first of all, finding out that your partner was tested positive?
I remember, you know, I was living in Old Compton Street at the time, and I think I was in my 20s. And I remember Tom coming back, and he'd been out drinking, and he'd been in a relationship for about a year and a half by that point. And I remember him coming back and saying, I've got something to tell you at like 3 a.m. And I was like, tell me tomorrow, you're drunk. He was like, I need to tell you now. And he literally said, I went and got tested today and I'm positive. And I was like, all right, well, okay, whatever, go to sleep and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And kind of that was the conversation. And then slowly but surely, Tom got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I remember, you know, going to get tested about a month down the line. I thought, okay, I need to go and get tested. And they had same day testing back then. But, you know, I went and they told me, it was negative. And I was like, okay, thanks. You know, don't know how, because I'd never had protected sex ever with Tom. And basically, just carried on with life, and Tom got worse and worse anyway. But Tom passed away from full-blown AIDS in 95, I think it was, around then. 94, 95, and I just carried on as normal. And, you know, literally, as the drug possession, the drugs got worse and worse and worse. My situations obviously got worse. And I used to think that I'd go out and I'd pass out and I'd be blacking out, and all of these situations happened, and the meth mouth, and I couldn't fight off disease, and that's the reason why I had meth mouth, because I had no immune system. It had gone, and I just thought that it was all to do with the drugs, and I was in so much denial for so long. And anyway, one day my mum came to my house on a Tuesday, remember, and I literally was unconscious in the kitchen on the floor. She found me unconscious in the house and she rushed me to hospital, and they basically said there and then, okay, you tested positive, we're going to keep you in. And I was like, I want to go home. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't have the strength to go anywhere. And I went into hospital and I got very, very bad very quickly. I was in there for about 4 months in all. And basically what had happened was I tested positive, but my viral load was so high because they said I'd probably had it for about 10 years. And my viral load was in the billions, like in the millions, and my T cell count was just in the low hundreds, like lower than 100 at one point. And they put me into isolation. I was in a room for and I deteriorated really quickly. I think that I had a lot to do with the coming off drugs at that point in time as well. And just being locked in a room. People had to wear face masks, which is nothing new these days, but then, and I used to think, and I just thought it was just awful. Anyway, it had gone into my brain, and they kept having to lumbar puncture me, and I got so bad that they put me into a coma, induced coma, so that they could take the swelling down off the brain. And that's all I don't remember anything, obviously. I remember coming round, and I'd been in coma for months, and my mum was there holding my hand. And now I've got to cry again. And my mum was there holding my hand, and I remember just coming around and just thinking, oh, I don't understand what's going on here. And I just lay there, and slowly but surely over the course of time, they told me that, that I nearly passed away, that I had pneumonia, and I had all of these things, and I couldn't fight it. And they basically had put me on a new trial drug. My mum had given them the permission to put me on a trial drug, which basically saved my life. And slowly but surely over the course of that time, I came out of isolation. I was allowed back into a ward, and I was slowly progressing and getting better, and started putting on weight and everything due to the drugs that they'd put me on. And I still wanted drugs. From the moment I could get out of that bed, I would just be out in the streets scoring drugs. I'd have people come up the hospital bringing me drugs. It meant nothing that I nearly died. My addiction was so much stronger than I was, that's all I thought about. My boyfriend came to the hospital one time. I remember being in the room, and he was like, you've got cocaine around your nose. And I was like, no, it's face cream. And I remember him going absolutely mental. And I was like, you need to speak to the doctors or the nurses. They'll tell you if I'm on coke, if I've been doing drugs. They'll know by my blood pressure. And trying to convince him that I wasn't doing drugs. He knew straight away, And it was just like the fact that I had no respect for what I didn't put my family through. That's the wrong thing. But what my family had gone through, and what he'd gone through, and everyone else around me, around my diagnosis and what I'd gone through. He couldn't cope with it, and off I went again. Just got out of hospital. I remember coming out of hospital and then just carrying on as normal. It was bizarre. I just went straight back into my old ways very, very quickly.
So not even the HIV shook you to...
No, far from it, no. I just thought, okay, well, it really was a case of, okay, well, I didn't die that time, I'm going to die this time.
Did you think you might die from AIDS at one point?
Well, I nearly did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I literally nearly did. And, I never ever once said to anyone, I nearly died of AIDS. I use the word HIV quite frequently because it sounds so much nicer. Do you know what I mean? Even in this day and age, we still have the stigma attached to it. It's 2022, and we still have stigma attached to the words HIV and AIDS. It's no longer a death sentence. We're probably a year away from a cure. They've already testing the injections now. It's groundbreaking stuff. But you know what? I never dealt with it. I just ploughed straight back on, doing drugs because of the shame that was attached to it. It's always to do with shame.
How can we reduce the shame around AIDS and HIV?
Well, just by talking about it and making it open. When it came to putting it in this book, I never discussed it with anyone really. I never put it out there. I talked quite openly about addiction. I talked quite openly about everything in my life. Apart from that one thing, because I still had internalized shame around it. I still felt shameful. Oh my God, people are going to see me in a different light. People are going to judge me. I've done some of the worst things that you could possibly do to another human being in the sense of addiction and and the cheating and the lying and everything that went with it. And I had no shame around that stuff. But when it came to something that I was not responsible for, I wasn't responsible for myself catching HIV. It was an epidemic. It's where we were. And, you know, I still had shame around it. And it's in this book, and it's a really important bit in this book because I want people to know what I went through and what that I can now openly talk about it.
How do you feel talking about it now?
I feel proud that I can talk about it. I do. I kind of accepted. You know, when we were writing the book, and Mikey was like, "There's bits you don't need to put in," and my publisher said the same, and I was like, you know what? I'm writing one book, and I want everything to be in there. And I think that what I've gone through, if it will help one person go and get tested, or one person go and get asked for help in any of the situations that we discuss in that book, and that book's already a bestseller in my eyes. Do you know what I mean? Because it will change people's lives, and I just think the more honest I am to myself, the more honest I can be with everyone else. And that's, to me, it's a job well done. And I'm proud that I've put everything in the book that needs to be in the book. You know, it's not an easy read. It's a fun, you know, don't get me wrong, I find humour in everything, and that's
We're
funny.
going to talk about that in a sec, yep.
You know, it's,
you had
why write a book if you're not going to be honest?
But it's because it's being honest with yourself, and I think that's one of the hardest things you can ever do. And you know, I mean, even just reading it, and the proudness I got from just knowing how such a brave individual can put themselves completely out onto paper. Not many people can do that. No. And you really need to give yourself gratitude for that.
Thank you. I've learned that since writing the book, because the amount of people that have said, "Oh my God, it's so honest, it's so unvarnished." You kind of, the only person that you give a bad time to in it is you. And that's kind of like, there was one review from this lovely lady that said that she found it like the fact that I am so hard on myself in certain areas in it is almost, you love me more, and I can't, it's the fact that I'm unvarnished in it is like almost like a superpower to the book, because you know, I'm just honest. I'm not going to overgloss things. I've done that. There's no point to it. I just think that if I wrote a book about, oh, so-and-so said this and this was amazing and we went on this private jet and we did that and all that rubbish, what a boring book that would be. Some people would find that interesting, you know, but that wouldn't be true.
Well, it's being real and it's being honest, isn't it? It's being yourself.
Yeah.
Which for so long
I've never been myself until I came into recovery, and it's taken 15 years to actually get to being who I am, to be in a relationship where I can know that I'm not doing anything bad and there are no secrets. I just actually go through that. It's remarkable.
Acceptance.
It really is. You know, there's no, you know, for years I kind of tolerated a lot of things, and it's not about tolerance, it's about acceptance. And I'm accepting that I can be loved today.
What would you say to anyone who doesn't feel like that? Who can't feel that they can be accepted?
It's all about small steps. It's all about just going outside of your comfort zone and putting yourself out there and just saying, you know what, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what happened to me. It's not going to happen to me again. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to be me. And you know, if you don't want to accept that, then I don't want to be tolerated. You know, as a gay man and you know, being a member of the LGBTQ plus a community, we come up against a lot of tolerance, and those days have got to change. It's all about acceptance now, and I've really, you know, if you can't accept me for who I am, then you're not in my life. You know what I mean? It's you know, that internalized homophobia that most gay men have in certain areas is such a weight around our necks. You know, the shame that I had around being HIV positive, the shame I had around addiction, the shame that I had around so many things in my life were holding me back, and they're not holding me back anymore. You know, I have sleepless nights over this book. I won't lie to you. I've woken up at 3 a.m. and thought, oh my God, things are really good for you right now. Why are you going to fuck it up by releasing a book and letting everyone know the truth? Because, you know, We do these brunches and it's full of middle-aged like women that come and they love what we do, love me for, you know, which is it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And I just think, are they going to understand it? Are they going to read it and read it in the wrong context? It worries me. But you know what? That's not happened yet. But I can dwell on that. I can wake up at 3 a.m. and think, oh my God, what have you done? You've just...
Anytime you put yourself out there, you're going to feel that.
Yeah.
Because it's a judgment.
Yeah, of course.
It's a judgment that someone's going to make of you and tear part of your life that is weighs such a massive part of you. And so if someone can kind of tap into that vulnerability, that shield's gone.
Oh, they will do. There'll be the haters. There always is with anything you do in life. But bring it on.
But you'll help so many people
As I
with
say
this
in the book. No one can judge like I've judged myself, and also everything in that book I've lived that shame, so I'm not going to get it again.
No.
So don't even try and bring it to my table, because I've you know, by putting it out there, it's been put out there for a reason. If I had any shame around it, it wouldn't be in that book, and everything's in that book. Do you know what I mean?
What journey you've been on?
I always say it's not over yet. There's a lot more to come. But you know what? I just think, one day a week or 2 days a week, just not being on the drama triangle is fucking amazing.
Do you get addicted to that?
Of course you do. Totally. I lived for drama. You know, as I say in the book, I used to play No More Drama by Mary J. Blige on loop. On loop. My neighbours used to come and knock on the door saying, please stop playing that record. And I would play it on loop because that's all I ever had was drama. And I loved it for drama because it gave me a purpose. You know, and I would get off on drama and, you know, man, I'm drama free sometimes is a remarkable experience. Do you get what I mean?
Contentment. It's a big
Laying
one.
at home, I was just going to say with my dog watching TV, is a gift.
Do you know what else is a gift though? Is your humour.
Yeah.
Which I've been waiting to get to. I have to say, your Instagram got me through lockdown. Your Instagram memes, you had this very natural way of being able to say something that everyone's thinking without causing any offence. And that's a skill to have.
Well, you know, so, I mean, my Instagram is run on stolen memes. You know, the majority of stuff I take on is, you know, I look at his Instagram as a library. You know, we put pictures of ourselves on, we put pictures of things on, we make memes, we put whatever we put on there, people can come and take and use and store and take them. That's what Instagram is. It's not the Louvre. It's not the National Portrait Gallery where you go and look and you can't touch and you leave and you can buy a postcard. It's not. That stuff that you're putting out there, it's for anyone to use. And people forget, oh, you posted this, that, I posted that, it's whatever. Good, knock yourself out. Do you know what I mean? And I collect pictures. I probably have at the moment on my phone 65,000 pictures. I just literally constantly, I'm on social media, I take. I'll add, and then we'll come up things. But my mind, in the morning, I think very carefully about what I'm going to post as my thought of the day. You know, there's a real art to posting at the right time of what you do. Do you know what I mean? And when we were in lockdown, you switch on the telly and it was doom and gloom from 6 a.m. to the minute you went to bed. It was fear-based. Everything was being pumped full of fear. We were fearful of this, fearful of our neighbours, fearful of the neighbour's cat might have cat COVID. You know, that's the levels it went to on a daily basis. You switch on the television, there was no relief from it. And I just thought, okay, with Instagram, I'm going to start posting really stupid things, just funny things, because you know how my mind works. I just find humour in everything. I think when you've gone through what you've gone through in life and you can laugh at it, that's kind of overcoming it to a certain extent. Do you get what I mean? And I find humour in drug memes. I love to laugh. I'm sorry, I've earned the right to laugh. And I laugh at my own mistakes. I laugh because that's where I'm easiest at laughing at stuff. Do you get what I mean? And during lockdown, something really remarkable happened that, people warmed to my Instagram so much, and it kind of propelled my profile massively. And you know, and I get so many people coming up to me going, "Can I just tell you, you saved my lockdown?" And I think it's amazing.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
You brought sheer joy to people in the hardest time.
The Evening Standard said that I saved 2020. They did this big story on me, which I thought was pretty amazing. You know what I mean? Like they did this whole front page thing of it, and you know what, kind of, it was just what I do. I was at home posting pictures. Do you know what I mean? Obsessively. You know what I mean? Like literally obsessively. You know, and it wasn't contrived. It wasn't me trying too hard. I was just finding things and just posting them.
But we need humour in our lives.
We do need humour in our lives more than ever. You know, we're living in troubled times. It's like, you know, we're going backwards in so many areas, and we have to find that relief. Someone like me, I don't have the choice of going to the pub when I finish work. I do have that choice, but it's a choice I choose not to make, to go and have a drink, or I don't, you know, oh God, I could kill this or I could kill for that. You know, I actually, you know, since I got into recovery, I learned to laugh properly. You know, I used to laugh.
It's the best drug.
Yeah, it really is. Music and laughter. The two best drugs you'll ever come across in your life. With those two things in your life, you're a happy person. I mean, just laugh. I laugh at every situation.
What's your favourite track that makes you feel uplifted? What would you play?
Or apart from every George Michael track under the sun, you know, if literally, there's a track called by Soldiers of Twilight, and it's called Believe, and the words to it probably helped to change my life, because it says in it, you know, when we're halfway there, when you believe you're halfway there, and it's like you got to believe that your life will change. And I listen to it when I'm really feeling low, because it lifts me so much. Do you get what I mean? I just find any kind of music, you know, I don't listen to music, I feel music, you know, and it will change the way I feel. I can put something on, you know, it's such an amazing thing when you embrace music, because, you know, it's like a time machine. You suddenly close your eyes and that person's back in the room with you that you associate that track with. Or it takes you back to that euphoric time and that feeling. It will give you goosebumps, because it's noise, it's vibration. It lifts lifts you to a different height. No drug will ever take you to. Well, you know, it's about just embracing it. And I love music, and so I will literally say, hey, I'm not going to say the name because it starts playing music all through the house. And literally, it has my tunes on there. So I just say, hey, play some music, and it will play all my favourite tunes, one after another.
It is therapy music.
It really is. It really is. It saved my life. As much as recovery, music is my recovery. I love my job more than I've ever loved it right now. I love what I do. I love playing music, and it shows. It shows. Even if I'm in a bad mood, I will go to work and it will change everything. When my dog passed away, I went to work the next day. I wasn't going to go, and every track I put on, I started crying, because it had that connection. It had that, you know, and people, you know, they all knew that my dog had passed away, and they weren't expecting me to turn up at the brunch. And it was probably one of the best things I've ever done, is by going to work that day, because it just took me out of myself. What was I going to do? Stay at home crying all day? Do you know what I mean? And music has that power.
It gives you a release.
It really does.
Because you don't bottle it up, you actually let it out. And that's the biggest type of therapy. It's the most powerful. 100%.
As I say, if you've got a problem, talk about it. When you have a problem and it's in your head, it will be manifesting to something so big and something so much worse than the original problem. Talk about it. Get it out there in the open, and take the power out of it. When we hold on to stuff, we give it such power. And, you know, by letting go of it, you know, go out and dance, go out and listen to music, put on your favourite track, close your eyes and breathe. Honestly, it will change everything.
But don't go up to you and ask for a request, because you don't take requests.
I don't do requests. You know, we called the book I Don't Take Requests, not about asking me to play a track. It's about, I've never taken requests in life. If you said to me, "Oh, eat your greens," I'd like you to eat. I'd be like, "I'm not eating my greens." Do you know what I mean? Don't do this. I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's always been the same. And so when it came to writing, coming up with the title for the book, it was. I kind of just said straight away, I want to call it I Don't Take Requests to Mike. And Mike was like, bit of an odd one. I was like, no, we're not. And he was like, well, kind of makes you sound like a Radio 1 DJ. I was like, no, it's not about, yes, I've never, if you ask me to play something, I'll tell you to f*** off. Right? You know, because it's like, I'm doing my job. If I went into your shop and said to you, like, I had this conversation with Victoria Beckham. I said, if I went into your shop and you had green dresses, and I said, can you do it in blue? And you said, that's not part of my collection. How would that make you feel? She'd be like, yeah, you're right. I said, so don't come to me and say, can you play this? I'm doing my job. F*** off. So, you know, it kind of tied in with everything.
I love that. So, have you ever taken a request? I feel like in your book I read that you did once.
Yeah, of course I have.
For money?
Yeah. like an old prostitute I am. No, I have. Of course I have. I mean, you know, there's been situations where people have asked me really nicely, and I think, you know what? Yeah, I'll do that for you because of the way you asked me. But you know what? There's nothing more annoying when you're playing somewhere and you're doing, you know, a set, and you got like 2,000 people or even 200 or even 20 people dancing in a room and they're having the time of their life, and you've got some idiot comes up to you and says, can you play some garage? Or it's like, why? Why are you not in the moment where everyone else is? Why do you feel you're so special that you can come and ask me to change what I'm doing? Do you get what I mean? Put down your phone, put it in your handbag and go and dance. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not just saying it's always women that ask me for requests, but you know, it kind of, you know, they're not in the moment, they're not content, they want to change what you're doing, and you don't need to do that. Just let me do my job.
So the last question I want to leave you with, which I ask every guest on the show, is what does live well, be well mean to you?
Live well, be well. You know, health is not about what you eat. It's not about, you know, just like going out for a run. It's a recipe. It's about having healthy thoughts and having good thoughts. And live well means just having a balance. Everything has to be balanced. If I do too much of one thing, the scales top, and it all comes tumbling down on me. So it's about balance. It's about balance. So that's live well. And what's the other quote?
Be well.
And be well is exactly the same thing. You know, if I'm living well, I will be well. I'm in the moment. And I just think, stop worrying about what's happening next week and just live for today. Be here right now and make sure that you know that this is enough. This is enough. You know, it sounds really, you know, it's easy for him to say, but you know what? It's never been easy for me to say. More harder for people like me that struggle with being in the moment. And it's taken 15 and a half years of hard graft to actually think, okay, I'm all right with who I am right now. I'm not too old, I'm not too fat, I'm not too this, I'm not too that. Do you know what I mean? I'm all right with being who I am. And that's kind of where being all right comes from, with that, just being okay and living in the moment.
I think that will inspire a lot of people.
I hope so. I hope people like the book. I'm so worried about it.
Do not be worried. I can contest that it's an incredible read with a lot of highs and lows, a lot of moments which made me cry.
Yeah.
But a lot of humour, and it feels like that's this interview as well. We've gone through, like, I've seen your emotion, I've seen the trauma come up and arise because you had some of the most horrific moments, but you've also harnessed that with humour.
You know, it's just, I have to be me. And if you can't accept that, if people can't accept who I am and what I do and what I say and what I've written in my book, then find someone else to hate on. Do you get what I mean? I'm done with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. We didn't talk about hair products either.
We don't need to.
Thank you so much.
I'll give you a cuddle.
Thank you.